No, I'll see. We'll see him. Ooh, are we on sound? Okay.
We better not tell any secrets.
Our meeting's adjourned for how we're going to do this. We are all excited about Hannah being here and Kay organizing this. Her idea to do it is wonderful. I just wanted to start us off with 3 scriptures. Judges 5:21b. O my soul, march on with strength. Romans 10:13 through 15. How shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those that preach the gospel of peace and bring glad tidings of good things. Isaiah 52:7. This was, we just read, as it is written, and it was written in Isaiah 52:7. How beautiful on the mountain are the feet of those who bring good news, who proclaim salvation, who say to Zion, your God reigns. Okay?
I'm just winging it. All of you, I think, know Hannah, our world traveler now and our own private missionary. And I was just thrilled she's home. Yeah. But I thought it was great she got to go. And took that step and went, because when I was her age, I would have been scared to death to leave the state of Oklahoma, much less anywhere else. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Hannah, and then we're going to have lunch afterwards down the hall in the fellowship. And I'm so glad all of you made it. Thank you.
Hello. Am I good? Yes? Okay. So this summer, I had the opportunity through my school at Harding to go to Albania for a global outreach mission internship. And so I spent 2 months in Albania with one other girl from my college. And we lived in Tirana, and we worked with the church and the World English Institute. So, where's the little clicker?
Something fell on the ground. Is it on?
Oh, yes. Yes. So Albania is in between Greece and Italy. So I put it on the map because not everybody knows where it's at, and I didn't know where it was at before I decided to go there. So the population is around 2.8 million of the whole country of Albania. So compared to the U.S. with 332 million, it's quite small. And the population of Tirana is 500,012. And that is about the size of like between Oklahoma City and Tulsa, so like somewhere in the middle there. The religion is predominantly Muslim. There's 2 different types of Muslims, Sunni and Shia. Sunni is the main type of Muslim that we encountered. But most people claim Islam but don't practice it, because Albania used to be under Turkish rule, and the whole country of Turkey is Islam. Like, that's their country's religion. So most of the people I worked with were Muslims, but didn't really practice it. And then there were a lot of people who didn't have any religion. They weren't atheists, but they just didn't practice religion or really want anything to do with it, but like they weren't completely opposed to it. And then I worked with a lot of Catholics and Eastern Orthodox. And besides the people that I taught who went to the church in Tirana, I did not encounter any other Christians who were not Catholics or Orthodox. So that's Tirana. And Tirana is the capital of Albania. It's the biggest city in Albania, and it's a pretty big city. This is a picture of Tirana, and so this is from my balcony. I was on the 8th floor in my apartment building, and everyone in Tirana lives in apartments. There are no houses. There are villas, which are mainly for tourists because nobody can afford to live there. But you might have a couple big families living together in one. And like if they're farmers or like growing their own produce, then sometimes they'll have like a family villa that they inherited. This is the church that I worked at, but it is also the World English Institute building. So it doubles as both. The English classes are taught in the basement, and then church is upstairs in the auditorium, and then the level in the middle is all the classrooms. So the picture on the right, sorry that was loud, picture on the right is the main auditorium where we gather for church. And these pictures, one of them is Scannenberg Square, and that is the main hub of Tirana. If you're going anywhere and or meeting up with someone or trying to get a sense of direction, you always go from the square because it's a great point of reference because it's in the middle of the city. And the lake is where it's new. It's only been there for 3 years, but that's where we went a lot of times for devos and for our young professional classes. And we go there for community gatherings because it's outside. They went there a lot during COVID, so it's kind of special. VBS. So one of the first things we did when we got there was Bree and I, my teammate, we were in charge of planning VBS, the whole thing. So we started the first week with script writing. We decided that we were going to do it more like a play, kind of, and we were going to have an opening script, a closing script, and a Bible skit each day. And so our backstory was about a grandfather who had passed away and left his will to his children. And before they could get into the vault that had all of his possessions, they had to solve the mysteries of the parables of Jesus and become truth seekers of God's word. And so the key to open the vault was who or what is the ultimate truth. And so the whole week they were trying to figure out that Jesus was the ultimate truth. And they could learn more about God and his word and what he wanted for everyone through the mysteries of the parables and the lessons they learned. So our first week was script writing, and then we taught English classes at night. And then our second week, which this is one of my favorite weeks because I love teaching and I love being creative, but this is where we made everything that we were going to use for VBS. So we didn't really have all of the resources available to us to be able to do it, to just buy everything. We had to make a lot of things. So the silver tin looking thing is a vault that we made out of a refrigerator box. And we spray painted it silver, and we put cardboard shelves inside of it. And we had been recycling our old water bottles that were giant, 2-liter water bottles. And so we spray painted those gold and put jewels on them and put goodie bags for the kids inside. And then we used some paper towel rolls and a screwdriver to get it to turn, the wheel to turn. So we made that. And then some of these pictures are of the obstacle course that we set up for one of the activities. And each day they had a different clue leading them to a Bible verse for the parable that they were going to learn that day. And so the clues in the opening skit were one of them was a puzzle, one of them was an invisible message, one of them was a code, different things like that. So we prepared all of those, and then we prepared everything for the activities. And then the demonstrations, which the one on the slide is of the wise and foolish builders. One of them built their house on the rock, one of them built their house on the sand. So we poured water over it to see which house stood. So we had a couple demonstrations like that. And then the other Bible skits were more acting them out. like the parable of the Good Samaritan. We had the 2 robbers, we had the 3 men, and the Good Samaritan. So we tried to make the stories come to life so the kids could learn better. And I was in charge of arts and crafts during the week of VBS. So I was leading that room. My teammate Bree was leading the activity and our translators in the rooms needed to be able to speak Albanian. So these are some of the cute kids that we worked with. And then we had other members from the church who helped with the Bible skits and who helped lead singing at the beginning of VBS, and just helped with being like group leaders, leading the groups around to stay organized. These are some pictures from VBS. The song that they're leading on the stage is, it's the frog song. It's really funny. And then this middle picture is our actors, because in the opening and closing skit, we had the detective, the brother, and the sister. And then the Bible skits were all of the kids who were above the age of 13 who couldn't come to VBS, but we still wanted them to be involved and still learn from it. So they were the actors in our show. And there were about 30 to 40 kids each day at the church, and most of those kids don't come to the church regularly because they use VBS as an outreach. And they do it at the beginning of June because most kids are leaving for the summer to stay with their grandparents and other places in Albania, so they try and do it before they leave because they get out of school later, so right before they leave. This was my favorite part of my internship because my major is elementary education. So I was not teaching kids, but I was teaching, and I loved it. So the program we use to teach is the World English Institute. And these books are set up with, each lesson has an English lesson and a Bible lesson. And I originally thought it was like the English language, but it's more grammar. So it's English grammar, and then it has a Bible story that they will read, and then they answer questions for both of them. But the English section is optional, the grammar part of it. But the Bible lessons are required, and they know that coming in. We don't try to blindside them in any way. They have an introductory lesson with the secretary at the church, and she tells them like what it's going to be about and what they're going to do. So they know that coming in, even if they aren't Christians, they know that they will be reading Bible stories. And so what was really cool about this was that a lot of my students had heard some of the gospel stories, but they hadn't really seen the character of God in them, or they hadn't realized that God wanted a relationship with them, and they hadn't ever sought that out. I had one student who would say that they had a relationship with God before like taking any English courses or anything. So it was really awesome seeing people encounter the gospel for the first time with new eyes and seeing the love that God has for them through the gospel and the hope in their eyes. Like, it was the most beautiful thing. And just the conversations that I had with students about their faith and where they were in life and their experiences with churches in the past. It was very, very moving. And our mission there, or goal, was we were there to plant pebbles in people's shoes. Regardless if they threw that pebble away or if they saved it for later, or they took it and did something with it, that didn't matter. But our goal was to just plant a seed and help them to see the love of God, because the love of God is what changes people. We don't change people. It's the love of God through Scripture and through other people showing them love and through the stories that truly changes people. And I got to see some of that through my students. I did not have a single student who was baptized when I was with them. But I think that is the ultimate goal, but I think that you have to be patient with people. And people will get there in their own timing, because if you want their faith to be their own and for them to own their faith, then it takes time. But I loved seeing hope in people's eyes. It was beautiful. This is our teaching party that we had our last week when we were there. One thing we really wanted for our students was to connect them to the church. And so when we were teaching, we told them about like the opportunities at the church and different events that we had going on if they ever wanted to come. But this particular party was meant to connect the church with the students and connect the students with each other. And so we had members from the church there. We had all of our students there that came, and all of the teachers. And it was just an opportunity to get everyone together and to help them see that like there's beauty in community and relationship with people that are actively like seeking and searching for God. So that was the point of that. And then this is another church that we visited. It was in Majot, and it was a very small church. It was a one-room church. You can see the chairs that are in there. And it was in a local village outside of Tirana. It was about an hour and a half. Tirana Church of Christ is the only Church of Christ in Tirana. The next Church of Christ is about an hour and a half away. And it's this one. This is the next closest. But there is a missionary couple from our church, Brenda and Wayne Spear, and every other weekend, they go and travel to another Church of Christ in Tirana, and they take the preacher and his family out, and they kind of talk to them about what the needs of the church are and how they can help support those. And so we went with them and did that, and then they go to the church service, and sometimes Wayne will preach, sometimes the local preacher will preach, and then afterwards we just have fellowship with everyone in the church. But the point of it is just to see what needs there are and how we can help serve the other churches, with also like building community between churches. Because when I was in Tirana, we had a lot of people from other churches come and just worship with us sometimes, because they really focus on all of the churches throughout Albania, like creating one family with all of the churches. These are some places in Tirana. The ones with the fountains are the park, the main park in Tirana. And we went there a lot to gather with the youth, which the youth in Tirana is anywhere from 13 to like 25 years old. And Tirana is the youth capital of Europe, so there's a lot of young people. And the bunker beside the Pink Building is a museum about Albania and their struggle with communism. They're only 30 years removed from communism, so there's still a lot of issues, I would say, with their government and working there. So we learned a lot about the history of Tirana through the bunker museums. There's multiple of them in Tirana. The horse is Skanderberg, and he is their hero. And the square that I showed you at the beginning is his square, technically. And then you can see in this picture a little bit, the one with the buildings, the mosque, and every day there's the call to prayer 5 times a day. And there's multiple mosques throughout Tirana. There's definitely more mosques than churches. But every day you would hear the call to prayer 5 times. Community was very important in Tirana. The way that they lived was by relying on each other, and if they were a Christian, also relying on God. But for all of our meals, we ate with a lot of people, and it was like family style. They would just bring out a lot of food for the whole table, and you would all just share it, because that's one way that they just really value fellowship. And since they don't really get a lot of fulfillment through their jobs, they value relationships a lot more in their culture, because there's not really a way to advance in their careers, but they can always be building more relationships and stronger relationships. So we used our apartment as a place for people to meet and gather too. Every week, Bria and I had a group of people over from the church or sometimes our students, to eat, and we cooked for them. And then the bottom pictures are the sleepovers that we had with some of the younger girls from the church, because we just really wanted to encourage them and help them to know that there are good friendships that they can seek with fellow Christians, and how valuable that is. So we had a couple of sleepovers over at our house, and we had a lot of people over for meals. Hospitality is really big in Albania. The castles. So I can't really have a presentation about Albania without showing the castles, because Albania is known for castles, and I only went to 3 different ones, like shown in the pictures. But that's a big part of, I guess, their history or their culture. It's just all of the castles. They used to have a monarchy after communism, and now they have a parliament, which they have a prime minister and a president. It's a little tricky with how it runs, but they have a lot of castles. This was a mountain that we hiked a couple times. It's in Tirana. We had Saturdays free for the most part, unless there were church gatherings on Saturdays. So Saturdays were our day to kind of regroup and to refocus for the next week. So this is Mount Deide, and you have to ride the cable cars to get up to the mountain in order to hike to the top. So that was a little bit scary the first time, but it was good. And then these are some other pictures throughout Albania. The picture with the buildings is Berat, and it is the city of 1,000 windows. And it is very historical. In Berat, there's a museum with some manuscripts from the Bible that they just recently found, Old Testament manuscripts. And so it's become a place that a lot of people like to visit. And then the middle pictures are from Kruja, and that is a village on top of a mountain. So there's a lot of shepherds and a lot of people growing their own food, and it's very different than Tirana. Every surrounding city in Albania is very, very different from Tirana. And then the bottom pictures are some beaches. One of them is Vlora, one of them is Durrës. Durrës is about 30 minutes from Tirana. Vlora is about 2.5 hours. But those are some places that we had gone on Saturdays. So this one gets me, but Tirana and Albania in general, it's a coffee culture. You go to coffee for absolutely everything. For business meetings, sometimes for teaching, if you want to gather with friends, if you want to go on a date, if you want to meet your grandparents, for any reason, you go to coffee. And so every major business in Tirana has coffee and sells coffee. So we went to a lot of coffees. And what makes Tirana really special is the people at the end of the day. I think the people make a place special. And I really, really loved the people. And loving people. And I got to work a lot with the people in the church and build relationships with them and the teachers and my students. And it was just very beautiful seeing how all of that was so interconnected. And the bottom picture is the I Love Toronto sign. And our last night, I was like, I have to get a picture in front of it because I was like, I've been here for 2 months. But yeah, the people make a place special. And Toronto really did feel like my home, even though I was only there for 2 months. And it was because of the people and also the mission. But I loved it. And if you guys have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer that. Because I love this place and I would love to share it with you and answer any questions that you guys have about what I did, about the place, the culture, people, anything.
Will you recap, for those that came in late, starting with the map? Can we get that?
Yeah.
Starting with the map and the location. There were a few that missed your introduction there.
Yes.
And then there we go.
Maybe. Yes. Okay, so Tirana is the capital of Albania, and the country of Albania is located between Greece and Italy. The size, 2.8 million, which compared to the U.S. with 332 million, that's significantly smaller. The population of Tirana is about 512,000, which is in between Oklahoma City and Tulsa. Tirana is a very big city. People walk everywhere because you can still get anywhere in the city probably within 30 minutes maybe walking. If you walk really slow, maybe an hour. And the most common religion in Tirana is Islam. But people don't generally practice it. They claim it, but they don't practice it. And that was the case with a lot of people that we worked with. They might go to the Catholic or the Orthodox Church on holidays, but they don't really claim it. They claim it, but they don't really practice it. And I would say that was the case for most of the people that we worked with. Yes. Yes, it's like light yellow/white. Yes, the Adriatic and the Ionian Sea. Yes. Yes. And in the north, it's a lot of mountains. In the south, a lot of beaches. So we were kind of in the middle, and we had the mountains surrounding Tirana, kind of like how the mountains surround Jerusalem. It was kind of cool. And then we were about 30 minutes from the coast, the beach.
You did a lot in 2 months.
Yes, and this is the city. Everyone lives in apartments. You can see the mountains everywhere you go. If you're up high, if you're walking, you can't always see them because you're from a lower level.
What about food?
The food? Oh my goodness. So they have more of a Greek style or Mediterranean style for food. I do have some food allergies, so I ate basically the same thing, but it was good every single time. We would have meat and grilled vegetables and Greek salad, which is like cucumbers and tomatoes, olives, olive oil and vinegar and salt, and then fruit. I ate a lot of fruit. But they have a lot of, they're called gyros. It's like pita bread wrapped up, and they have a lot of those. They call it souvlaki there, but most people know gyros. And then they have barek, which is like a layered pastry, but normally they make it more savory, like spinach and cheese. Sometimes they put meat in it. Sometimes you might get one that's sweet, but it's not very common. They have like a traditional Albanian cake, which has like so many layers, but I didn't eat any of those foods, but those are some of the traditional foods there. A lot of goat, a lot of lamb. I thought it was pretty good, but it's my opinion. But I would say I definitely ate healthier there. I didn't eat very many processed foods. And everything was grown fresh. We got our fruits and vegetables from the market. Meat we got from the grocery store because we didn't know a butcher. But
So when you cooked for the people,
yes.
did you cook their type of food or did you cook what you know how to cook?
So, I would say kind of a little bit of both. We always made like the traditional Greek salad that you would get anywhere, and we made it how they make it. But as far as our meals went, we kind of did our versions of things because they don't really have a specific meal that's like theirs. A lot of times we did rice bowls with like a lot of different vegetables and rice and meat. Or we did Mexican food sometimes because people like just hadn't tried Mexican food. And so that was kind of fun to share with them. We did Italian food, different pastas. I would say we normally did more American food, but also we worked with a lot of Americans. In the church, the people that we worked with, I would say about half of them were from America, half of them were from Albania, but everyone was sponsored by a church in America, even the Albanians. No one was paid by the church. They were missionary sponsored by churches in America, and then their contribution in the church went towards the building and outreach. And the reason they initially bought this building was for refugees, to host refugees and provide for them. I don't think the Ukrainian refugees, because I think it was earlier than that, but that was their original purpose for getting the building.
So while you were there, did they bring in any of the Ukrainian refugees?
No, but they did work very closely with the Roma community, which is a small village in Tirana and very impoverished. There is a lot of poverty in Albania. There's not a middle class. There is super wealthy or rich and people that are so poor. And it's evident. You can see it. You can see people all over the streets. It really hurts your heart. But I would say even their wealthiest people are only like lower middle class here. And government officials are the wealthiest people because they're the people that pay everyone and that kind of abuse the money system of power. So there was a lot of poverty. And that was something that was very difficult to witness every day and like trying to help people. We would frequently, I mean, most of the time they want money, but we would try and give them food too, because a lot of them like were searching in the dumpsters for food. But also something that we struggled with was there's also a business for beggars in Tirana. And a lot of the people that are begging, a lot of them are kids, and they're giving it to their parents, who are then giving it to whoever is over all of the people. So it's a very difficult situation to navigate because not everyone is in that business, but some people are. So you don't really know anybody's intentions. But I guess our philosophy was, Bri and I's position was, we have money to give, we have food to give, so we're going to give it anyways. But people in the church struggle with it a lot because there's two different sides to it. So.
What was their temperature variation in seasons?
So it's very similar to here. It was about 100 degrees every day, but no humidity. It's a dry heat, and then it gets cool at night. It's about 70s, 80s at night, which is so nice. In the mornings, early in the morning is kind of cool, but it gets pretty hot pretty early in the morning. And because you walk everywhere, I thought it was a lot hotter than here just because I was outside more. You don't drive places. So, I mean, some people do, but we didn't. So I thought that it was hotter, but I know it's also been super hot here this year, so I'm sure it's probably about the same.
What's the Sunday morning attendance?
I would say we've never had probably more than 100. Probably like 40 to 60 is probably normal. There aren't a ton of locals that come. There's some families that are very involved in the church that live in Albania, and they come regularly. But we also had a lot of teachers in the summer because they host a campaign for people from America or just native English speakers from any country to come and teach English. So a lot of the attendance was teachers. It was the missionaries that worked there. There are like 5 families that come regularly from Albania. But we had some new people come every now and then, though, and that was also really exciting. But I guess their main outreach is through people that are poor. I'm trying to bring them to church so they know that there's more in life than just things like, even though they might be poor and not have a lot of money, like they don't have to be poor in spirit. So I think that is one of the main outreaches at the church, but also through students, through the World English Institute, because the English classes we taught were free to everyone. They didn't pay anything to take those. Yes. Yes, we were teaching through the World English Institute, and we were using all of their materials, but we were teaching English and the Bible, kind of, because we had grammar lessons, and then we had Bible stories that we used for comprehension and discussion. So we were teaching English, but kind of at the same time teaching the Bible, but we never tried to force anything on anyone. So, like, we would challenge them with questions, but we didn't want to tell people their faith. We wanted them to have their own faith and come to that themselves through questions, through thinking. Something in Albania is that in schools, they're learned to memorize everything. They do not learn to think for themselves or to share their opinions. And so when I was teaching, I noticed that a lot. People felt very uncomfortable sharing their own opinions or asking questions from answering questions from their own perspective, because that was something that they were never taught to do. And a lot of people were very surprised when you would ask them like what they thought about something, because they're like, they don't ask us that in school. So it was also kind of changing a mindset too a little bit, of them being able to have their own stance on what they were reading. Even though it is truth to us, like it's not truth to everyone yet, like they haven't accepted the truth. So a lot of people are still searching for answers, and that was a beautiful state that we noticed, just questions that people had. And we didn't always have all the answers, and I think that's important to know and to stay humble about is you're not always going to have all the answers, but I tried to point them to scriptures that would be helpful and encourage them to study more and pray if they did have some type of faith, to try and have God answer those questions.
Looking forward to your VBS, so those that.
Oh, yes.
Well, you can go ahead and tell her.
Yes, so we did Solving the Mysteries of the Parables of Jesus for VBS, and so it was like a mystery / detective theme. And so we did the parable of the Good Samaritan, the parable of the mustard seed, the parable of the 4 soils, the parable of the wise and foolish builders, and the parable of the prodigal son. And so each day the kids would have a clue that they would have to crack, and that would lead them to the Bible verse in order to study the story. And we had Bible skits, and we had crafts and activities, and singing, and then our opening and closing skits, which were focused on our backstory of a grandfather who had passed away and left his grandchildren in his will, like everything that was in the vault, but they had to become truth seekers in order to open the vault and know who or what was the ultimate truth, which the code to the vault was Jesus. So they had to discover that through all of the lessons that they learned through the parables. And then I was in charge of arts and crafts during the week of VBS. We had planned everything before, but during that week, that was the room I was in, and I had a translator because I do not speak fluent Albanian, and a lot of the younger kids don't speak English. They learn English in school, but unless they learn it at home, a lot of the younger kids don't speak a lot of English.
Is there a big push or drive for them to learn English, or is it just like us in Spanish here?
No, it is very, very common for them to learn English. It's learned in almost all of the schools because knowing English in Albania is very impactful because it allows them to get better jobs working for international or American companies within Albania, and that gives them more opportunities to be able to support their families. But we didn't struggle a lot with language in Albania because almost everywhere we went, somebody knew English, and sometimes the menus would be in English and Albanian. It's definitely the second most common language in Albania, next to Italian. Italian is very common too because they have a very good relationship with Italy. But I would say everybody that I worked with at the church spoke English. Almost everybody that came to the church spoke English, but the sermons were in Albanian, and we had headsets where somebody would translate for us in English during the sermons. We sang all the songs in Albanian, but our English classes were taught in English, and I had some students who didn't speak very well English, and we had to use Google Translate more to communicate and for me to be able to understand the questions that they were asking. But for the most part, we didn't struggle a ton with the language barrier. It's very friendly to English and Americans, I would say. If we tried to speak in Albanian when we went somewhere, like they would always like try English to see if we knew it, and then from there on out speak to us in English because they really want to practice their English and improve in that. So we learned a little bit of Albanian, but it was just kind of like not super helpful because everywhere we went, people wanted us to speak in English, not in Albanian. Even though it's an honor-shame culture, so you would think that they would want you to honor their culture by speaking in their language, but they kind of idolize America, so they do like English. Yes. Of the words? So Miriam and Jess is good morning. Siene is how are you? And most of the time people will say mirror, 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 which is good, just over and over and over again. Sometimes people will say shumir, which is very good. Most of the time people are good, whether or not they're good or not, like they'll say they're good. And Falamandera is thank you. Po and yo are yes and no. Po is yes, yo is no. But if you put those together like po-yo, that's like chicken in Spanish. So you have to be kind of careful. But I would say those are the main words that we used. Natanimir is good night, but most of the time people just say natin, which is night. Mirdita, good day. We greeted people a lot in Albanian and told them thank you. But as far as like ordering in Albania, so their language is, they have 36 letters and they all say the same sound. So reading in Albanian really isn't that difficult, except for the fact that as Americans, we can't pronounce some of the sounds very well, and we can't recognize the difference between the L and the double L. It sounds the same in our ears. So if you know like the alphabet, it's quite easy to read, and I was able to sing fine in Albanian, but I didn't exactly know what I was like reading or saying. I knew a lot of the songs because they were songs that we had sung in church. But as far as like reading menus, I could recognize like some of the words, like beeftek vici is veal. I got that a lot. So like I could recognize some words in it to be able to tell what it was. But also there's a cool thing on your phone. It's a Google Translate app, but it has a picture icon, and you can take a picture of like a menu, and it like will automatically translate it. So we use that a lot if we had Wi-Fi, because we could only use our phones on Wi-Fi. So after this one, teaching English classes.
Were you here for that? Do we need to repeat that one, or are we good?
Okay.
I thought that's about what we came in. Were you a
Yes.
coffee drinker before you went?
Um,
Are you a coffee drinker now?
So I had drank some coffee before I went this last semester of college. I feel like I needed it a little bit. But the coffee is completely different there. So if you order coffee, they serve you espresso, which is straight coffee. Very strong, very rich. It is good. It's very good. But you have to ask for coffee americano if you want American coffee with water in it. But they have a lot of different types of coffee. Every name for the coffees, different types of coffee, is completely different than what you would see in the United States. Like, they're the same names, but like you will not get the same drink as you ordered in the States. Because apparently we named them all wrong, and it's more about how it's made, and not about what's in it. So like a mochaccino has no chocolate. It's about the way the coffee is made, and it is cold. Freddo means cold. So if you want cold drink, that's what it'd be called. But I did drink caffeine for a little bit, but then I had something with my health to where I couldn't drink it anymore. So I didn't really drink it towards the end of my trip, but it is very good. So
Do they grow coffee here in the mountains?
I don't know. That's a great question. I'm sure they probably do, just because they grow everything that they use. So it's likely, but I'm not sure.
How did you come up with your apartment?
Like, how did we?
Find it for you?
Okay, so
Did you have to look for an apartment?
So our missionary host over there was Ellen Walker, and she used to live in Searcy, which is where I go to school. But she's been in Albania for 25 years. But we live in the same apartment building as her. We just live on the 8th floor. Some of the previous interns in the past had lived in that apartment, so they knew the people that owned it. And the woman that lives there normally leaves for the summer. So, like, we lived in her apartment.
So it was fully furnished, you didn't?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes.
And were you ever concerned for your safety?
Okay, so Albania is actually a very safe place. And that is because since everybody walks everywhere and a lot of families are out at night and people are out, there's always people everywhere. So I was never concerned about my safety. I felt more safe than the United States. And that wasn't just me being naive. I talked to a lot of people in the church and people that had been in the States, lived in the States, and they said the same thing. It's a lot safer because there's a lot more people around. And so if anything were to happen, like, there would be so many witnesses. And Tirana is a pretty big city, so you rarely go anywhere where there's not people.
Do you have a hospital there?
Yes. So they have an ER. And they have a lot of people that are trying to get in, really long lines. And they will only help you if you are dying, if you have an actual emergency. They have an American hospital that is a Turkish hospital, not an American hospital, that's just the name of it. And they have a lot of specialized care. So it's really easy to get in to any specialized doctor, but they don't have any general doctors except for family doctors. And those are private doctors that you hire for your whole family. But the rest of their healthcare is public healthcare. You do not pay to see any of the doctors. You pay for the medicine. And most people in Albania can't even afford the medicine, so basically healthcare is free, but you don't really get a ton of help if you can't afford the medicine that they're going to give you in order to help you. Healthcare is not great there by any means.
Wow. Anybody else? I think it's great. I really enjoy it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I
And
should
we're
have
gonna have
mentioned,
lunch, and then Arlene's.
I should have mentioned, for you that don't know, Hannah went most of your high school career at Jinx, right?
Yes.
Jinx Trojan. And she graduated in,
Gravette, Arkansas, Northwest
Yeah.
Arkansas.
and then they got to come back. We really appreciate the influence of her mom, Nancy, and her grandmother, Eleanor, that's here with us today. You did a good job, girls. And we're more than proud of you. I hope everyone heard she is majoring in elementary ed, and she's going to be a fine, what is it, she? Do you hope to go on to other international mission trips?
Yeah, so I guess I developed this dream while I was there, but it had kind of been on my heart for a while. I would love to be a full-time missionary and teach along with it, like teach kids in villages while doing mission work. I really want to be a missionary in Africa, which is kind of daunting to a lot of people. But also, I love Tirana, and I wouldn't mind being there for a while. I love teaching. I would love to teach internationally because I think that there's a lot of opportunities abroad.
But we need good teachers here.
Yes. And you get teachers everywhere.
And you graduate in December,
Yes.
and then practice teach, or is it practice teaching now?
I'm in my second semester of student teaching.
Student teaching,
Yes.
the uneducated. Well, we do appreciate the efforts Kay did to put this together. What a benefit to everyone that showed up, and we've got a great group here. I hope everyone can stay and share lunch with us. Kay has got an area there for us to visit one-on-one with Hannah. She did a tremendous job, and we'll have a prayer thanking God for all of us safety to get here and continued safety for her, Hannah. And she's been a blessing to us, and I know she was a blessing in Albania. We'll ask a blessing for the food as we pray now. Dear Lord, thank you so much for today.